right, Single 40 podcast. Let's go. Today's guest is Keahi Pelayo. So Keahi is a good friend and mentor to me and Glenn. He's in the real estate industry. He's a real estate broker. So I asked him to come on because he's somebody we look up to and somebody that's taught us a lot over the years. So one little story to start the podcast off about Keahi. I met him about 12 years ago through my uncle on Maui, and I was moving over to Oahu to buy a property. Showed me some properties, and we didn't end up doing something together. But then Keahi literally called me every 6 months for a fucking decade and left a message like, hey, it's Keahi, just checking in, seeing if you're in the real estate game. And then eventually, as I got more money and decided to go buy another property, I called him up. So that persistence always, blew my mind, and I respected it. And that's the reason I called you back, because if you would have never called me again, I probably wouldn't have called you. So that's what I always tell people, that story about you. So anyways, welcome to the podcast, Keahi.
Glad to be here.
We're excited. Yeah. We're excited to have you. So we want to get into the real estate game here in Oahu and how you built the empire that you've got now, your brokerage and whatnot, and just start from the beginning of where you were born, where you grew up, and let's get into it.
Well, I grew up in Lahaina. Back when Lahaina was more a sugarcane plantation than a destination resort. In fact, it was sugar destination, right? And great place to be, great place to grow up. Went to Lahaina High School, went to school in the mainland, was on the long run for college, but got into the real estate business in 1983 in Orange County, California.
Where'd you go to college?
Two places. Started at Western State College in Colorado. Then I met a girl on the beach in Kaanapali Beach, and she happened to live in Corona Del Mar. Okay. And so left Western State College, and then ultimately graduated from the University of Redlands. Okay. And that was in an adult education program, and in the 80s that was a big deal because there weren't adult education programs, right, where you did it after work and on the weekends, and got a degree from there. But as part of my real estate, while I was working, and bought my first property when I was 24.
In Orange County? In
Orange County, yeah. And bought my first investment property about that age. And, I'm lucky because I've been surrounded by big thinkers, right? And my father was a kid from the other side of the tracks. He was one of those Polynesian guys that went to Punahou because he was a good football player, right? And I learned from him. He said that the blessing of having gone to Punahou when he did was that he figured out that he was no different than those other people, right? Because at the time, think about when the Big Five, you guys probably don't know what that is, but when the missionaries and all the plantation sugar growers were all powerful here, my father was in school, and you didn't hang out with them as a local guy. But because he played football well, it got him around them. And he said to me, they put on pants just like we do. We can do anything they can do, right? And I was lucky to have a father that said, the world's your oyster. And what he meant by that, it's open to you. And he used to say, don't blow it, right? And so I don't think anybody does anything by themselves. There's always people that help them along the way. So he certainly helped me buy my first property, and I paid him back, which it's kind of funny because when I paid him back, he was really happy. And I didn't understand why he was so happy. And I said to my brother, I have an older brother, and I said, why was Dad so happy? And he goes, because you paid him back. You don't know how many of our family members have borrowed money from him and they never paid him back. I'm going, I didn't know that was an option, right? So, I lived in Orange County until 1991 and intended to be there for 2 or 3 years, and had been there almost 10 years. And I said to myself, if I don't go back to Hawaii, I'll never go back. And I'd just gotten married, and I said to my new wife, let's go. We just have to pick a time to go. There'll never be a good time to go, right? And I think that applies in life. I never thought about that until this moment. There's never a good time to start.
No, never.
Right? You can always have more money, more knowledge, more information, but just start, right? And there's magic in starting, right? So we just picked a date, and we said, I was talking with my son this morning, We picked June 30th, 1991 to come back, right? And we missed it. But that's the beauty of target dates. It gives you something to shoot at. We came back August 3rd, 1991. And she loves it here. I love it here. I love Oahu. Even though Maui's physically bigger, it was a small place. And my brother and my father were there. So I figured I'd come here to Honolulu and been here in the real estate business, ever since. So 83 to today, that's all I've ever done. I'm not qualified to do anything else other than dig holes. And I've mixed cement and carried cement block and did all the kind of labor that you do when you're in college. And then I came back. But what's interesting is when I was in Orange County, I was in the commercial real estate business. I sold apartment buildings, right? And I came back to Honolulu and the market was too small to do that. At that time in 1991, you would do Keahi, right? Or you would do downtown. You didn't do the whole island. That's how they segregated the commercial business. And I said, I'm going to go into residential real estate because everybody wants a house, right?
In a bigger market.
A huge market, right? And the only challenge in our market is affordability, right? Everybody wants a house, but we all know there's not enough houses. And so I got into the residential real estate business, and that's what I've done pretty much ever since. And there's a nice mix from that experience, that almost 9 years experience in selling commercial real estate, because I understand that side of the equation and the income aspect of real estate better than just having sold houses. So that's kind of my background, and I own real estate. I think that people have to have something more than just, I want to make money in a business, right? And so my passion was here in Hawaii with selling real estate was if I can take someone who's never owned real estate before and put them into a house or a condo or get them on a path to building a real estate portfolio, I can change their lives.
No, definitely. I mean, you've changed mine.
Well, well, thank you, and you were well on your way when we finally started working together. But when you think about families that have been renting, right, and so if we can just get someone into their house, right, they have a better retirement, they have assets, they're thought of differently by banks. They can pull money out of their houses to educate their kids. They might be able to help their kids buy a house.
American dream.
American dream. There you go.
So to back up a little bit, so when I first met you, when I first came to Oahu, and this is something I really respect about you now. At the time, it overwhelmed me, and what it was, I met you and you took me out to the North Shore and showed me this lot of land,
Yeah.
and you had all these ideas, and it was looking back on it, I should have done what you were saying, but I only had the experience of buying and selling one house, and I barely got through that process, learning it and whatnot. So I knew that, and you were showing me this property and you had all these plans and like, dude, this is, if I was your age, this is what I would buy. And at the time it kind of intimidated me and overwhelmed me because I wasn't that forward to thinking yet. And I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I remember you showed me another place in Waimanalo that had a river that ran through it. Another probably fantastic deal that I passed on. And I was intimidated at the time because I wasn't into construction or I didn't have any knowledge of, doing stuff like that. And then I ended up taking like a safe bet. And then eventually, I called you back. But over time of getting older and having more life experience, I realized like Keahi's the guy you need because he thinks forward like that and he sees the bigger picture, probably because of your commercial background and your experience. And there's a lot of realtors, but there's nobody that I've dealt with that has that vision and the knowledge that you have. So something you probably didn't know that I thought about you, but.
Well, thank you. It's when you think about our lives, it's our fathers, our coaches are probably the most influential people in our lives. And my father always said to me, never rest on your laurels, right? Never rest on your laurels. And to me, that means it's baseball. What have you done for me lately? You hit 2 home runs yesterday and scored 4 runs and, stole a base. And today you struck out 3 times. We don't want to rest on what we did yesterday. And so we always have to think about how do we keep growing? How do we keep moving forward within the context of what you want from life, right? I know that you guys are a lifestyle channel, and you guys really, from what I can tell, live life the way you want to live it. And
We try to, yeah.
and I respect that. And happen. We have to have an understanding of what we want, right? How many people do we know that you say, what do you want? Like, they can't tell you, right? Where do you want to be 5 years from now? I don't know. Well, for sure, wherever you want to be 5 years from now, you'll be there. Well, if you don't know where it is, you'll be there too, right? So taking the time to really think through what inspires you and what makes you, what winds your clock. Right.
No, it's great advice, because at that time I was like 31, 32 years old, and I just moved over here for this big job promotion, and that was enough in my life at the time, but I didn't have that mindset of, don't rest on your laurels type of thing. I wasn't forward thinking, and that's why I was probably, a little intimidated by all the things you were showing me. And it took a long time. It took, the next 10 years, like I said, you called me for 10 straight years every 6 months, for me to just go through different experiences and basically figure that out. Mm-hmm. And then, a few things changed my life. One of it was like, I wasn't into traveling at all. And our company, we had this PTO rule where it capped at 240 hours. And I basically, all I did was work, and I always had my PTO capped at 240 hours. And they changed the rule, and they basically said, hey, at the end of this calendar year, every year, we're going to cut it down to 80. And right now you can sell it back to us, but it's 50 cents on the dollar. So obviously at the time, this pissed me off.
Sure.
But it opened my eyes up to like, well, I need to use this PTO. Like, I can sell it for 50 cents or I can actually just use it. And that's kind of what got us to start traveling, or at least got me to start traveling. And the experience through travel kind of opened my eyes up. I was in this slump, if you will. Like, I had a great time in high school, a great time in college, played sports, had partied, had fun. And then me and Glenn went on a trip to Southeast Asia, and I recaptured that feeling of having fun and being like, just because I'm 30 and I have a career job doesn't mean I can't enjoy life and live life. Like, there's more to life than just going to my corporate job every day. And that was like the first turning point that kind of got me to start thinking like, well, how do I do this more? Like, how do I, and that's exactly what you're talking about. And then I got the mindset of, let's grow this goddamn thing. And that's when I reached out to you and, started on that path.
Well, and look at you. I mean, you're the perfect example. I mean, we talked about this before we walked in, about how I don't think there's any get-rich-quick scheme that works long-term. Certainly, there are things that look like they're going to work long-term, but they don't, right? But the beauty of real estate is if you buy it now, it'll generally rent to cover itself, right? You buy another one, and there's financing available, and a lot of people say, well, real estate returns aren't that high, right? People told me I could make 12% on my money in the stock market. Yeah, well, let's see. 12% on $10,000 is $1,200, right? So you take that $12,000, right? $10,000. We put you into a $300,000 condo, right? It appreciates 3% this year. 3% of $300,000 is $9,000. So people get stuck on percentages rather than real numbers, right? I have a friend who's in the restaurant business, and he said, everybody's always into margin. They want margin. What percentage margin are you getting, right? So chicken, there's huge margin in chicken, right? And he said, but if he sells a huge steak, he might make $6 on a piece of chicken, and that's 50%, right? But he sells a huge steak that he pays $30 for, and he sells it for 50, right? That's only 40%. Percentage-wise, he's losing. But what's more, right? $20 or $6, right? Yeah. Right? So I have a question for you. Yes. We were talking about books, right? We talked about Buy Back Your Time when we came in here. But where did you get your inspiration? What did you read, or what was it? What did you pay attention to?
It's a good question. A lot of things. Starting to watch people's podcasts and just hearing people's, success stories of, just going for it. And you said something earlier about like just starting. And that's something that I try to live by now. And I'd heard, the thing I came to is like with all the books I've read and the podcasts I've watched and watched people like you that are successful, like you guys all have the same message. It's just portrayed in your personal experience way. Mm-hmm. But the message is pretty much universal. You know, it's like you said, just start, just go, and then be consistent and keep doing it. And there is no hack to get rich fast. You know, like some deals will be better than others, some won't, but it's the consistency. So there's not like one thing that inspired me, but it's just that whole mindset of like-minded, successful people. And like we talked about earlier, you know, if you can envision it, you can do it. And if you think you can't do it, you can't. And as I heard and followed and read about more successful people, I kind of came to this answer that it's like these guys all have the same formula. It's just portrayed in their own way from their experience. So that's kind of what changed my mindset into start forward thinking and trying to do more stuff and take risks. And, you know, but it comes down to consistency. And I already knew that in my life, but I didn't know it on the grand scheme of things. Like I was an athlete, right? And health and fitness is the same thing. Like I can weigh 240 pounds like I did back when we came back from our holiday trip. Mm-hmm. And I know if I dial down my diet and I eat healthy and I work out every day, today I weigh 218, and that's in 37 days. So it's like I have that background in sports and athletics and health and fitness. Like business and life is the same way. Like you just stay consistent, you keep doing the small things, and over time, you know.
So you played football?
Yeah.
What position?
I was a linebacker. Glenn was a receiver.
No way.
And that's where we met at UC Davis.
I have this theory that you can tell a lot about a person based on what position they played.
Okay.
So I'm gonna say something, and let's watch his face here, Glenn. Quarterbacks.
Pussies.
Right. I mean, because they're protected, right? Well, yeah. And I played line, right? I played offensive line back when 240 pounds was big, right? You know, and you have to be willing to stick your head in it, right? I mean, you have to be willing to have your. People would ask me, well, aren't you getting lit up all the time? No, you know, I was playing center, right? And I had to come find the middle linebacker, right?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And nobody lights me up because nobody moves until I snap the ball, right? But there's a certain amount of determination in life. We talked about 10 years of calling you. I don't remember it being that much, but I look at it and I had a coach who just said, hey, this is a game, right? We're not teaching you to play a game here. We're teaching you about life. If you quit in this game, how are you going to treat life, right? And that was one of those valuable lessons that I've always took to heart. Hey, if I don't quit,
you can't lose.
You can't lose.
You can't lose if you don't quit.
And so the fact that you were you played inside or outside linebacker?
Inside.
Yeah. So you were you were like a center. There were people headhunting you all the time out there, right?
I played Mike Backer.
Yeah, there you go. And they would come out there to light you up, and there was a number on your on your back because you were the guy that was there that was going to break up the play if we couldn't get past you, right? So you had to have a certain amount of tenacity and commitment to doing that other positions don't have, right? Now, Glenn was out there on an island, right?
Yeah, he'd have to run across the middle and worry about somebody like me.
Lighten him up, right?
But
so I think that all of life, it's really, we need to challenge ourselves more and figure out ways to challenge ourselves, right?
No, the sports thing's interesting, and it's funny because he's laughing because we always talk about this, and I got a good friend that I played high school football with. He's still a good friend to this day, and a few years ago he told me something. He's like, if you didn't play high school football, like I don't respect you. And he was talking about in a business sense, right? Yeah. And like if you knew Rich, it's like totally something he would say, and it's like, yeah, Rich, like you're funny, like, but there's so much truth to it, and me and Glenn, it doesn't have to be football. It's like we've learned throughout our experiences, like people that have a background of sports, like going through those adversities and the structure and all that, are more successful as adults. And it doesn't have to be sports. It can be, playing your violin. And if you're consistent with that and you work hard, anything. Yeah. But in our industry, in our world, you can literally look at everybody we've worked with or worked around, and it's like the ones that are more put together and more successful have a background of doing things like that.
I'm going to add to that. One of my friends and clients said to me, he has a lot of labor, right? And so guys that may not have necessarily graduated from high school or for sure not college, but he needs labor, right? And a lot of it. And he said the one question he asked him, did you play a team sport when you played sports? And if they say yes, he asks them what sport. And as long as it's not surfing, he'll hire them because they've learned discipline. They've learned how to play on a team. They've learned how to support their teammates. They've learned they know that there's someone they have to follow. And there's just all kinds of things that sports teaches you about real life.
Well, the team part of it, and me and Clint literally just talked about this.
So crazy. So I just had to
go ahead.
Like we were literally just talking about this,
last week.
No, it was like yesterday too, because you talked to Rich yesterday.
Yeah.
So we were like talking about this, and it's bizarre that you brought it up, you know, and it's like lining up with. And every guest we have, it's something. There's something that happens that like aligns with both of us.
Every time we have a podcast, it's weird. They start talking. And then it's like, wait, we were just talking about this. Like,
this sports analogy stuff, like just about, you know, how to be a leader or whatever it is. It all goes back to your childhood, your experiences, and how you dealt with it. So
the team part of it's big too, because like what we were talking about the other day is like when you're on a team, especially when you get to the college level, but even high school, like you start playing with, like when you're a kid and you play like the lowest level of like Little League and whatnot, it's usually kind of the kids that are in your school or your neighborhood and you already know, right? But then as you get to like high school and you get higher, like you start playing with kids from across town or you know, different backgrounds, whatever it is. And they become your friends through that team. And you might not be like the best friends off the field, but on the field, you learn how to deal with them, work with them, and you get the camaraderie of the sport. So a workplace like mine's no different. I mean, our guys, we're all together more than we're with our families. And it's like the guys that have become better leaders and better employees are the ones that have had those team sports, you know, times. Because like football is the ultimate team sport, and it frustrates me watching the media because they always talk about the quarterback, and it's like you got Patrick Mahomes, probably the best quarterback in the league. Well, what happened to him last weekend?
Line let him down.
Exactly.
Couldn't protect him.
Without his teammates, I mean, he looked like a rookie, you know. And business is the same way. Without your teammates and without the people around you, like everyone's got to do their job, you know.
And I'll defend his line, right? His line got smoked. That defensive line was on fire, and no one was going to stop him.
No,
you know what I mean? And sometimes, you know, what I used to coach Pee Wee football, right? And one of my coaches says to me, we always tell the boys, we'd go, hey, boys, you know, it's not about winning. It's about, you know, it's about being better and doing your best, right? So we were winning a lot of games. At halftime, we go in, and I give them we were behind, right? So I give them the fired up, you know, talk. I mean, these are 9-year-olds, so it was big, you know, big time, right? And so we're done, we're walking out, and my assistant coach, he goes, hey, coach, I thought it wasn't about winning. And I go, it's not. And he goes, that speech sounded like it's about winning, right? And I go, guilty. So how do we manage this, right? And he goes, how about we talk about doing our best? And if we do our best as a team and we win, then we should party, right? Celebrate.
Yeah.
If we do our best as a team and we lose, then the other team beat us.
They're better.
They're better. And then he brought this up, and I took this to heart. He says, and if we do our best and someone or we don't do our best and we win, now we have something to talk about, because we can go after the boys and say, hey, you took that team lightly. You should have beat those kids. And guess what? You owe them more respect than that. And you need to put your best foot forward, and that wasn't our best out there. And it gives us a way to improve. And I took that to heart.
Better,
yeah, absolutely, right? And all from sports.
Yeah.
9-year-old boys.
So since we're on the sports topic, when I got done playing, a friend of mine got hired at a high school, you know, right out the gate to be a PE teacher and a high school football coach. And he asked me he was a teammate of mine in Glenn's in college, and he asked me to come help him coach. And so what we did was he took the job, and then he brought me on to help him out. And we set up a meeting with our college coach, a guy named Bob Biggs, who'd been at UC Davis for years. I think he's probably the most winning coach in the history of the program.
Heard of him. Yeah.
Super successful guy. So, you know, my friend Butterworth called him up and was like, hey, me and Nick are going to get into coaching. We want to come pick your brain.
Right.
So he invites us over to this office, and the meeting lasted 2 minutes. And I thought we were going to go over X's and O's and all kinds of shit. I was expecting to be there forever. And he sits us down. He's like, so you guys want to get into coaching? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, that's great. He's like, it's not for everybody, but, you know, I'm sure you guys can do it. And he's like, all I'm going to give you is one piece of advice, and then I'm going to kick you out of here.
Wow.
All right, what's that? And he's like, as the coach, you're the ultimate leader. And he's like, no matter what your team does or how they perform, it's on you. Mm-hmm. So he's like, if you can't get these kids to do what you want, you got to turn the camera or the mirror on yourself. Mm-hmm. And that's all I'm going to tell you.
Great advice.
The best advice I ever got, not necessarily for coaching, just for life as a leader in my job and working with other people, is like, you got to look at yourself, like that's all you can control is yourself.
So here's something. If someone gave me this quote many years ago, an organization is the lengthened shadow of its leader. What you're good at, your organization will be good at. What you're bad at, your organization will be bad at, right? And that means the buck stops with you, whatever example you set, right? And what your expectations are the wrong. You ever hear of expectations versus agreements?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, most people walk around going, you didn't do what I expected, right? Well, I never gave you my vote that I agreed to what your expectations are, right? But you get the agreements, right? So that if you say to me or I say, hey, Nick, do you agree to do this? Yeah, I do.
It's no longer an expectation.
It's no longer an expectation, right? So.
Oh, that's really good.
Yeah. So, love sports. Love.
Yeah, I didn't know you were center. That's cool.
Yeah. I love being a center.
Especially when you played, you're definitely, like you said, the O linemen were 240 pounds. They threw up a number on the Super Bowl with the Eagles giant line, and they said, whatever, they went back to like Super Bowl I, and the average weight was 240, and the average weight now is 320.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, a little bit bigger. You might not even be a Mike at 240 today, right?
No, definitely no. I'd be a DB in today's world.
Yeah, or a running back.
Yeah.
Right. What's Henry weigh?
Oh, Travis Henry's like 245, I think.
Yeah.
As a linebacker playing running back.
Yeah, but. Yeah, go ahead.
So back to the real estate thing, like, have you always had that outside the box? Like, that's one thing that I love about you is like, you look at all these opportunities. I mean, you just brought us one this last week that didn't work out, but it was kind of an outside the box deal. Like, how did you find yourself going on those paths, or it's just something you learned over time?
Let's take a step back before real estate, right?
Yeah.
I did a sales job for a motivational company for a year before I got in the real estate business. And it was really helpful because I learned a lot about motivation, about how important your mental attitude was, about planning and scheduling. Great education, didn't pay much. So at the end of the day, I said to myself, well, gosh, why, what do I want to do that is going to allow me to earn the income that I want to earn, right? And I looked at stocks, insurance, and real estate. And I didn't understand the stocks or insurance, right? And I noticed growing up on Maui that everybody that ever made any money always put it into real estate. So I put it into I said, I'm going into real estate. And because I've always been a follower of big thinkers, I always believed in buying real estate. And I remember coming back to Lahaina in 1985. So I was 25 years old, right? And I walked in. Well, let's back up. So one of my mentors, a guy named Jim Wilson, lives down in Mexico. He should be watching this. I'm going to send him a link to this. He lives down in Mexico, Lake Chapala, right, in Mexico. And so I took my first listing on a fourplex. Right, it was 4 units on Sprague Avenue next to Disneyland in Anaheim, right? Okay. And I remember it was $225,000 for a 4-unit building in Orange County, right?
Wow.
And so I come in the office and I say, walk in the office, and Jim had mentored me, right, out of selling houses and saying, hey, you should sell income properties. And I walk in the office and I say, hey, Jim, I just bought this. Or I just got this listing, $225,000 on Sprague. He said, that sounds like a pretty good deal. And I go, yeah, I think we'll sell it right away. He goes, you should buy it. And I go, yeah, I'll think about it. And I'm not going to curse, but he said, don't effing think about it, just freaking do it. And I thought about it. I said, well, okay. And he goes, and I go, how do I do it? He says, you're getting paid this much in commission, right? Find 2 more partners that'll put this much up, have the seller carry a note for this much, and buy the deal, right? And I bought it. Right? I think I was 24, right? Before I had a house, actually, interestingly. And so because Jim was such a big thinker, and I was around all the guys like that, and the beauty of being in Orange County in the early 1980s, everything was possible. It was entrepreneur central, right? And so they all just did stuff that they just said, hey, I'm going to do this. And they did it. So I don't think there's any magic. It goes back to taking action. It goes back to taking understanding that you have a vision that you can execute on. And I'm going to go out there a bit here. And one of my buddies said to me one day, he was a Catholic fellow, and he goes, Keahi, do you think God's bad? No, I don't think he's bad. He says, do you think he would do bad things to you? I said, no, I don't think he'd do bad things to you. And he goes, well, do you think God would let you see something that's not possible for you? I go, huh. No, and I'm going, wow, I never thought about that. He says, so you think that if God is a good God, you think God would come to you and go, hey, Nick, you want some ice cream? No, not for you, right? And I took that to heart. Whatever. There's a reason we get to see stuff. It's because it's possible for us. Does that make sense?
No, it totally makes sense.
Right? And we don't get to see stuff that's not possible for us, right? So it's simple, and you combine that with the action part of it. And so buying real estate. So we're here to talk some real estate, but let's put it in perspective of people that might, everybody is living somewhere. Let's agree on that, right? I mean, if you're homeless, you're living in the bushes, right?
Yeah,
you're living somewhere, and you're probably paying rent to someone in the bushes in some way, right? There's probably some person that's saying, hey, you got to do this for me if you live in my bushes, right? So I look at it, and it's going to be difficult for a homeless person when they're living in the bushes to buy a property, right? But if you look at it and you go, okay, someone's renting a place here on Oahu, right? $2,500 a month. Easy to find that kind of rent, right?
Definitely.
They can, right now, $100,000 will cost you $648 a month, right? So they can buy something right around $350,000. And the question is that out there, right? It's out there. It's probably not what they want, right? Now, it's not their dream home, but it gets their foot in the door. Does that make sense?
No, totally. And
so people go, well, I'm going to save your down payment. And another one of my mentors said this to me in Orange County, right? So Orange County was a great learning petri dish for me, right? One of my, it was Jim's, all my gyms, Jim Morsey goes, Keahi, you should buy a rental property. I said, well, I'm going to save more money. He says, you can't save money fast enough. He says, if you have enough money to buy a place, get in the place because it's going to appreciate faster than you can save the money, right? And I could have bought a duplex in Huntington Beach, and you know what values have done in Huntington Beach? I could have bought a duplex for $110,000 in Huntington Beach, right? So we've all missed it, right?
Yeah.
Right? But it's really believing in yourself and really taking the time to figure out a way to do it. We just helped a young man buy a property, and he was paying $2,500 a month, right? And he thought he had to save more money. So we put together a plan, and we said, how much money do you have, right? I think he had $12,000, right? Okay, he qualified for $450,000, okay? He needed, in order to close the deal, about $20,000. He didn't have any way to come up with it. Well, guess what? Your mom, your relatives can gift you money, right? So I said, we put together the plan. Hey, go talk to your parents, go talk to your girlfriend's parents, talk to your uncle, who else in your family would be able to support you. And the crazy thing is, families want to help. I mean, if you're a decent human being, your family say, oh yeah, man, that's great, Glenn. It's a chance for you to buy and get ahead.
Yeah,
and they
even
want
if it's
to help.
500 here, 1,000 here.
Whatever it is. And he put together the money, bought a townhome in Ahuimanu, right? And they got their foot in the door. Now, 10 years from now, I think he's going to look back and go, wow, that was a genius move.
Life-changing move.
Life-changing, right? So, it's not, there's nothing special about me. What's special, what I've been lucky to do is to be able to understand real estate and to buy it and hold it and use that to buy more real estate and buy it and hold it and use that to buy more real estate. Now we've gotten a little more complex because, I've been buying property up in the mainland, and I bought in Oregon in 2012 and got out of Oregon, and now I've gone to Huntsville, Alabama, and it's a little more complicated, but it's still the same formula. Buy it and hold it, right? Buy it and hold it, the magic of time. And as long as you don't over-lever yourself, and that's the key. Do we need to talk about what levering is?
Go for it.
So as long as you don't, there will be people that go out and I knew a young man who almost filed bankruptcy, and he may have filed bankruptcy because he went out and borrowed all this debt against properties that there's no way that he was going to be able to make the payments on it. And if anything went wrong, the game was over. Well, something went wrong. Game was over, right? Where if we're smart about it and we don't over-lever, meaning we make sure that we've got a couple of different paths to make the deal work, right? Well, we can flip it. If it doesn't flip it, we can rent it. If we can't rent it, we'll move into it, right? So we have to have multiple paths to be able to make the deal work so that we can fight another day, because real estate in the short term sometimes can come back to bite you. I don't think there's any question about that, right?
Oh, yeah.
But long term, just the passage of time makes you look like a genius.
No, totally.
Right? So we just have to get through that short term to get to the long term.
No, definitely. Look at the Date Street condo. Long term, it's going to be great.
It's going to be great.
I wanted to get out in the short term, and it just wasn't there,
Yeah.
And even the deal we just looked at this last week, I kind of felt like the way it played out after our initial thoughts was it was going to over leverage me a little bit, right? And so I was wasn't comfortable and moved out of it. But no, it's great advice, and I've learned a lot of this stuff from you. And like you said, you don't take any credit. It's the people you're around and whatnot. And you got to take the credit of the hard work and the consistency, because that was you. And myself, I always tell people, my life hack is I surround people around me that are smarter than me, and I listen to them. You being one of them when it comes to real estate, and following those people's lead, and then being willing to take the risk and go for it.
Yeah, but really, is it risk? Right? At the end of the day, you look at all the deals that you've done and that we've done. How much risk has there been in it?
It's a great point. There's not, right? But that's what holds people back, is the fear of it, right? The risk of it. And that was what was holding me back the first time I met you, was I was scared to get into something that crazy, because to me it was just overwhelming, but through time and listening to smart people and being like, no, you have to take these steps forward to move forward,
So I'm going to give you my saying, right? You can't make a shirt on it before I do. Okay. and this occurred to me probably 3-4 years ago. Fear. Right? Fear. When you have, unless you're staring down the barrel of a loaded gun, or there's a grizzly bear coming after you.
Like true fear.
Right, true fear. Pay attention to it. But most of our fears in life never come to pass, and what they do is they stop us from moving forward, right? If Glenn's here, you and Glenn, think about, okay, in the last 30 days or the last 6 months, think about all the fears that have popped up in your brain, okay? Oh, she's not going to like me, I'm not going to be able to afford blah, 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 right? How many of them came to pass?
None of them.
Yeah.
None of them, right?
Yeah.
So we need to fear. So when fears pop up, we have to really fear that's limiting us. Does that make sense?
No, I totally. There's a Stoic view on that. I don't know if it's Marcus Aurelius, but one of the Stoicism guys has a saying. I'm going to butcher it. I don't remember exactly what it is, but it's something like, people spend so much time worrying about. This is obviously a paraphrase. Worrying about things that can happen that don't ever happen. Mm-hmm. So it's like you sit there and you worry, like, oh, what if this happens? What if that happens? Exactly what you're saying. There's these little fears that they don't ever happen. It's like, when it happens, that's when you need to address it.
Yep.
Okay, if I buy this house and the market crashes, or I buy this house and the renters don't pay me, that's all bullshit until it happens. Mm-hmm. And then, okay, oh, the renter stopped paying me. Okay, now what do we do next? That's when you address it. You don't sit there and keep that from making the decision.
So let's jump back. You talked about that deal we didn't do last week.
Yeah.
So another saying is sometimes the best deals we do are the deals we don't do. Right? But the reason that deal worked was we had a margin of safety, right?
Correct.
I mean, we looked at it and said, hey, damn, we have a huge margin of safety here, so we can make things work. But then what made the deal not work was our margin of safety went away.
Cut down, yeah.
Got cut down, and that at that point, I respect people that can make quick and smart business decisions, right? The big challenge I see people that get smoked in business is their ego gets in the way, right? And I'll use another guy's name, Mike Wright, local guy, and he might watch this, but I was selling a property for him up on the North Shore in 1994 or 5, right? Right on Sharks Cove on the water. To give you an idea how the market has changed, right? We had it listed at $595, I think was the number, right? On Sharks Cove, right?
Wow.
And so we're in $595. We get an offer, comes in, and it was like $495. And I'm not excited about sitting down with my client to talk about this low offer. And to his credit, he goes, Keahi, I got one question for you. I said, sure, what's that? He goes, I think this market is going south fast. And if we don't make this deal work, I could end up getting a lot less than this deal is offering, right? And I said, yeah, that's intuitive. I think you're right. And he goes, we're going to make this deal work. And we came up with a number, and it was a funny way he came up with a number. He goes, go back with this number. And it was like, blah, 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 $267, right? I mean, where'd that come from? He goes, I wanted to think I thought about it. and the guy took the deal, right? And the market did go south. A lot of people, and I honor him because to me that's smart business, right? We talked about how business is just business, right?
Yeah.
And that was business. When ego gets involved, no, I put this much in, and I want this, and I want that, and how many times do they say "I" in the sentence? Will tell you how big their ego is, right? But business is, hey, what's the reality? What do we have to do? And how do I cut my exposure? Let's make a decision. Boom, you're out. Right?
Well, like you said, sometimes the best deal is that when you walk away. Early in my scrap metal career, I had a mentor of mine tell me sometimes the best scrap deal you make is the one you walk away from. And he was giving me the ego talk of like, you can't buy everything. And, I was out there trying to buy scrap, and I was trying to make every deal work. And, I had this one deal. I was like, I got to make this work. And he's like, it doesn't make sense. It was actually on a boat, and the other thing he told me is floating scrap is sinking scrap. But he basically said, like, sometimes the best deal you'll ever make is the one you walk away from. And never hearing that before, it was like, kind of gave me the confidence to walk away from deals instead of the ego side of me, like, I have to close this, like, I need to do it. So, no, I totally hear what you're saying on that.
Yeah. Well, another one, I've got all these people that have given me great sayings that I try to learn from people. I don't know if you get that, but one of my clients, again, same guy who did the, what sport did you play, right? He said, hey, if it's not easy, I'm not doing it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Right? And you know what? Whenever we do a deal, it's always easy. There's no drama. There's nothing, right? And as soon as it gets hard, he goes, I'm out. And there's never drama, right? Because if it's hard, he's not going to do it, right? And I think that sometimes, being a lineman, sometimes our biggest strength can work against us. Sometimes, you keep sticking your head in there too much, and maybe you shouldn't stick your head in there as much as you want to, and that's just being self-aware, right? But I've tried to take that to heart because there's no quitting this dog,
Self-awareness is one of the most underlooked, attributes people have that are successful. Being self-aware is huge. And a lot of people lack it, and that's what holds them back, in my opinion. But I mean, back to the deal that we were talking about earlier, the one from last week with us, like, I mean, it changed, and like my awareness was like, this is going to take a lot. Like, it became a harder deal than what we thought about, kind of like what your buddy said. Yeah. And it's like, this just isn't.
Yeah, but here's what I respect. Yeah, I mean, if you were there, Glenn, it was beautiful, right? And
we had talked about it.
Oh, well, and he was just like, yeah, dude, I don't think this is going to work. I'm going to talk to Glenn. And if he's going to say what I think he is, we're out. I said, perfect. That's fine. And that's, one of the jobs of someone that does what I do is to understand when it's time to walk away from the deal. Because if we really take to heart, my job is to represent your interests, right?
Yeah.
Whether or not I get paid, right? Or whether or not the deal makes sense to me. Ultimately, my job is to advise you, let you know what the options are, potential outcomes, what the risks are. Ultimately, it's your responsibility to make a choice. And if you ask me my opinion, I'll share it with you, right? But at the end of the day, I, as a broker, have to be willing to walk away from the deal and not have a dog in the fight, right? And I know I've run into brokers because I deal with them on the other sides of deals that aren't necessarily watching out for their clients' interests, right? They're trying to, you can tell it's totally about them and getting paid.
I mean, that from my perspective, Keahi, that's one of the reasons why you've been so successful. Your level of customer service is extremely high in any part of business I've ever seen. Like a good example, I start dealing with you and, I have my certain set of, financial, means and whatnot. And, we've done business together. But then when I've thrown you over to like Lee and Glenn,
yeah,
like you have people that work with you and work for you. You never pass them on. Like you handle them and you've helped them buy houses and you've always had our best interests in it. And, we obviously tried to sell the Date Street. You invested a bunch of time and effort in that and didn't really get anything out of it. And then this last deal, but you always see the bigger picture and that like, all right, Nick's got friends, he's got this, he's got that. So you've always, bent over backwards for me and my group because you see the big picture of like, it's going to pay off eventually. And I don't know if you subconsciously do that or it's just who you are, but that's one of the reasons I'm always, recommending people to you and just because the way you handle your customers.
First of all, I genuinely appreciate it. And it's kind of funny because I believe in coaches, right? And I've had coaches in my business, in my real estate business since 1997, right? And it occurred to me, Michael Jordan, let's pick someone, Patrick Mahomes has a coach, right? And coaches always help us to see where our flaws are, right? I mean, they may not be the best player. We might be playing at a higher level, but they can bring us to a new level because they hold us accountable, right? And I think that, I don't think in terms of the dollar. I just know the dollars will come, right? I mean, it's just, if I serve enough people, if I help enough people, take care of them. And what I was going to say is my coach said to me, hey, what's your marketing budget? And I go, I do one marketing piece a year, if you call it that. And you've gotten it. Both of you have gotten my Christmas card.
Yeah.
Right? But I look at it and I say, all of my business comes from people that trust me, right? And so when someone sends me someone, right? I mean, believe it or not, in the last year I've done, I think, what was this? I did a $65,000 leasehold condo, right? My assistant made more money on the transaction. But because the person that sent me that transaction was one of my it was an equivalent of a Nick Garofalo, I'm going to take care of those people no matter what, right? Because Nick took the time to send them to me, right? Or Glenn took the time to send them to me. Now, if someone walked in off the street and said, hey, I hear you're pretty good. Do you want to handle my $65,000 leasehold condo? I'd go, there's probably someone else that should handle that for me, and I just think that the money takes care of itself.
No, it's a great model and it's a great course of action because I totally agree with you. And when you start talking about coaching, everybody needs a coach. And I literally just thought of the title of this podcast. It's going to be Our Real Estate Coach, Keahi Pelayo.
Wow.
Because essentially that's what you've become for us. And it's your industry, it, and you've coached us along the way. And like you said, Patrick Mahomes has a coach. The best athletes in the world still have coaches because you have to have people that, can teach you things. And a lot of people, someone told me once, you can't teach somebody something that knows everything. And you come across a lot of know-it-all type people. And it was good advice because I'll meet people and you start talking to them and it's like, oh yeah, I know. And I just stop because it's like, you can't teach people something that knows everything. And so the coach is a big part of it.
So watch this. Who's coaching you now?
And
just in general, I mean, you have a lot of stuff going on, my friend. I mean, you're building an empire, not only in real estate, but in everything that you guys are doing.
In
right?
all honesty, I probably need more coaches.
Yeah.
We just keep trying to surround ourselves with like-minded people.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of, it's worked out. I mean.
Yeah. No, and that's something we can talk about offline. I mean, I really, the people that play really big in my business, everybody that I know that plays really large in different forms of business, bring in a coach.
Well, you've given me 3 coaches in the last couple of years, from Keahi, my tax person. The Marie Hansen property.
Just so you know, that's saying something. If she'll take your
I remember that. And then Anna at CPB. Those are all 3 people that are very good in their industry and their craft, and they're coaching me up on property management, taxes, and banking. Those are 3 people that have became coaches to me. But yeah, I mean, Keahi was a godsend. And I remember you told me, I don't know if she'll take you. She's kind of up for a challenge. And it's like, well, if anyone's got a challenge, it's probably me.
Yeah.
And, she's great.
That's a tip of the hat. And just so people who are watching this, she would not take someone. She said to me many years ago, I don't want to take just anybody. I want it to be interesting, right? And she actually told me, I like doing your tax returns because they're interesting, right? And she said, I only want to do interesting tax returns now. I just don't want to do it just because. And then Nick needed some tax help.
My stuff was a mess. And the first thing she told me is I want to do everything legal and above board. And I'm like, so do I. I just got bad advice and I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And no, she's been a godsend and got me all online and made sure everything's legal, which I want to be. I don't want to be in a position to get thrown in the federal penitentiary by any means. So, but I'm hung up on this coach thing now because you talked about earlier before we started the podcast about having somebody monetize you, right?
Right.
And I'm glad that you said that. You've told me 2 things, that and then you talked about a CRM for the tire shop. And that's something we still haven't done, but as soon as you started speaking on it, I wanted to punch myself in the head because it's it's so obvious of something that we should do. And we're going to do it eventually. I need to find the time and I need to make the time to do it. But the monetization thing of the YouTube channel and hiring somebody, we get messages all the time and emails all the time from people selling services like that. Yeah. And I've always just turned my head at it. And I'm not saying I'm going to go return one of those emails tonight and find somebody, but hearing you talk about it, it's no, Keahi's right. I need to have somebody help grow this thing that knows what they're doing because I don't. And we do have aspirations. I want to be like Joe Rogan. I want to be a guest on his show because my podcast is doing so well. Yeah. He's obviously the GOAT, if you will, of podcasting.
Watch this. For now.
Yeah, right? I mean, Tom Brady was the GOAT till Patrick Mahomes came into the conversation, right? Right. So it's me and Glenn have those goals and aspirations, and yeah, we want to grassroots it and start it from our own, work. But at a certain time, I'm going to need a coach. And I never really thought about it until you mentioned it. And it's no, he's fucking right. Keahi's never given me bad advice.
Well, and I don't know who it is. And sometimes coaches are, don't give you the answer you want, but it's super valuable, right? And at the beginning of 2023, I hired a coach on social media, right? Because everybody's saying, oh, you got to do social media, I'm rethinking that, by the way. But I spent a fair amount of money in 3 months, and 2 outcomes came out of that. Number 1, I'm not doing social media. and number 2, I need to upgrade my website, right? And we won't go into why, but I had to upgrade my website because, I'll go into why. Because when Glenn sends me a referral, Glenn says, hey, you got to call Keahi to somebody. What are they going to do? They're going to jump on the internet and creep on me, right?
Yeah, Google your name.
Right.
Yeah.
And what we noticed was that my website didn't support Glenn's referral, okay? The other thing so this person that I was working with said, find 5 real estate websites that you think are the bomb, right? And then next week we'll cover it on our coaching call. So I went out and tried to find 5 real estate websites that I thought were the bomb. I couldn't find one. Right? I had to look outside the real estate business.
It's called an opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But because I don't market, I drill deep with the people that know me. right? And so drill deep with your subs, right? If I drill deep, then that's a really, that's like an oak tree, a root going down, right? And so I needed, and the reason I asked who's your sub that was offline too, right? But the reason I asked that is if we know who we're talking to, then we can drill deep, right? And I knew that if I put that website together, that would support you, not necessarily support you personally, but when you told someone to check me out, they go, oh, wow, he does. The guy kind of looks like he knows what he's doing. Well, I guess I'll give him a call, right? So I know we're going to talk more about this because at the end of the day, there's only one Nick, one Glenn, and we have to learn I'm learning myself how to scale, right? Scale means how do we get it so that you're doing the 10% of the things that really make a difference, and the 90% is being done by someone else. You're the leader, you're the mentor, you're the head coach isn't playing the game, but the buck stops with him, right?
Correct, yeah.
Right? So, yeah, all good advice.
No, we definitely need to find some type of coach to help us scale and help us,
surround ourselves.
And like you said, it was a great question, and honestly, our growth is probably slow because I couldn't answer the question of who our sub is. I mean, I have an idea of who it is, but we're still trying to figure out, the direction we want to go, I guess. And so it gives us something to think about. And
so going back, we're tying all kinds of things that we've been talking about here, Glenn. You're acting, and that's my wife and I laugh and debate sometimes. There are people that do, learn, do, right? They do something, they learn, and then they do something different. And then there are people that learn, then they do, then they learn. I personally am a do, learn, do person, right? Because I just want to get going, right? And then I find, oh no, that was a bad idea. But I'm a step further than I was before. Now I can see different options because of the step I took, right? So, don't be hard on yourself. It's part of the process, and that's why we're asking the questions. Right?
No, totally. And I think myself and I would vote Glenn as like you, the do, learn, do type of person.
Yeah.
I will take the podcast example. It's something I wanted to do. And we started the channel and we talked about it for a year. And this kind of goes back to everything else we talked about. We just didn't do it, And it's like, all right, we need to just go up there in the studio one day and just freaking film something.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what we talk about. Like, you need to set the equipment up. We need to film it and just make one. Mm-hmm. And so finally, after a year, it's like we just came up here and did it. And obviously it was crap, but we did it, and then we learned from it, and then we did it again. And I think, what episode is this going to be?
15.
15 or
wow.
15.
And watch this. How many people have been saying, we're going to do it, how long has YouTube been around?
Oh, 15, 20 years.
You know how many people that are out there right now that 15 years ago were going, I'm going to, once I get ready to get going, to get started, I'm going to go ahead and start filming it. I just need to learn a little bit more,
It's like the biggest message on YouTube when I basically taught myself how to do this, and it's just do it. Like, get started. Take your cell phone if that's the only camera you have,
Mm-hmm. In our 15 podcasts, we've had two pretty successful vloggers, meaning they have about 20, 30,000 subs each.
Wow. Guys
that we met over in the Philippines that vlog over there. And I always ask them, what's your advice for people that want to start a YouTube? And it's just do it. Just start. Just go. And they said the same thing in their own way of saying it, but that's the advice people give. And that's the advice we try to give. And with, like, the podcast is a great example of it. And I have this goal. Like, I heard this thing, Alex Hormozzi. I don't know if you ever see his stuff. He's one of those people on social media and YouTube that talk about. He's a successful. He started in the gym industry, and anyways, he's multimillionaire. But he had a podcast he was talking about where he basically made 400 or 500 podcasts before anybody started watching him. And he said this shocking number to me. He's like, if you make 21 podcasts, you're in the top 1% of the world of podcasters, because so many people quit before they get to 21. And so, like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to make my 21st podcast. We're at 15, but I will walk through hell, and you have to kill me to keep me from hitting that 21.
That one travel vlogger, and like, we came across her channel, and she was doing a podcast, and we're like, oh, this is awesome. And we watched it, and it was like she only made it to like 16 or something.
Read that girl,
It was like 3 years ago she stopped doing it. It's like, you were almost there. Like,
but that goes back to what we're talking about. Like, you just keep going, you know. And
well, and watch this real estate business, right? If 100 people get their real estate license today, a year from now, 80 of them will be out of the business. That's the number.
I believe it.
2 years from now, another 10 will be out of the business, right? And so it goes back to what we talked about. Hey, if you don't quit,
you can't lose,
right? You guys, hey, Glenn, did you search the long tail? You ever hear that term?
No.
Yeah. We're not going to go into it right now, but it just, with the blogging and the vlogging and the YouTube, you just never know what's going to happen with regard to the video you post. And because you started, you don't know where that river's going, and where all of a sudden you might find that exact subset, subscriber set where you go, boom, right?
And the whole content game has changed over the last few years with the short format video through like TikTok and YouTube. Where back when all this stuff started. No, so where we were going with it is, with the point I was going to make is, the content industry's changed, like with TikTok and short form video, where you're basically one piece of content away. Where back before, you had to get the subscribers and the people behind you to make anything go viral. And in today's world, the way it's set up with the algorithms they use, and it's all about attention, and they've changed their business models at the YouTube and the TikTok and whatnot, where it's like, you can start today, make one video, and it can get 50,000 views. Where before, you needed to have the base, because they weren't sending things out to random people. You only had your closed community of subs or followers or friends.
Right.
Facebook, you had your friends or whatnot. But now, the way they've changed it, I mean, there's no more gatekeeping in the fact that you could go make a real estate short video today on your phone, and that fucking thing can hit, and 50,000 people can see it tonight. So that's really changed the content creation game. So that's why people, if they want to do it, like, you never know how far you can go with just one video. We don't try to chase being viral, but I mean, you made the comment that you don't know what video is going to take you there, and it's like, you just keep making them, your odds go up, right?
Yeah, one day offline, I'll show you how the long tail works, right? And it'll identify, if you get enough videos out there. Offline, we were talking about getting to 21, right? And there's this term that I believe in called velocity, right? And momentum, right? Airplanes need a ton of, you don't see them taxiing down the driveway or down the runway to take off. They hold the brakes, they throttle up, and man, it's pedals to the metal, right? Yeah. And then they get up to about 10,000 feet, and you can hear them back off.
Momentum's a huge deal.
Yeah, and so it's getting to, in any endeavor, it's, and I'll use an example. I poured a brand new driveway, right? And on my house, my current house, and the cable guys came in and they go, hey, there's no signal at the house. I'm all, what do you mean there's no signal at the house? They said, you know what? We think the line got cut. And it was in the driveway, right? And I'm going, no. And they said, well, we think it's cut somewhere around here, brand new 4-inch slab or 6-inch slab, right? And I said, well, what do we have to do? And they said, well, you just have to open it up and give us access to the pipe. And we do that. And so I took out a 12-pound sledgehammer, right? And I said, right in here, and I drew a line. I said, yeah. And so I hit the concrete, right? Bounced off, pristine, right? Hit it again, bounced off, pristine. Did that about 15 times, and a crack formed, right? As soon as the crack formed, hit it again, and pretty soon, I don't know how many swings I was into it, that crack became pieces, and I got into it. And so the momentum comes from, you don't get the crack without doing the 15. Yeah. Head against the wall, right? Yeah. And you don't, and so I'm from the school, hey, if it's going to take 21, 25, whatever it is, let's get it done, right? Because if we take too long to get it done, we won't have enough momentum to get the plane off the ground, right? We won't have the velocity in what we want to do. So that's why I'm always tracking within my business, what the key indicators are that we have to be doing, because we know that certain things lead to certain things, right? In my business. My bet is within this podcast environment, there's certain things lead to certain things. I don't know what it is because I don't do it. And when you learn it, I'll steal it from you guys or research it from you guys.
Well, we need to get a coach.
Yeah. And then maybe I'll hire your coach once we get good. Yeah.
Well, thanks for the time. Thanks for coming out. Like you've been a huge part of our life, and you're a huge mentor and coach for us. So we really appreciate you taking the time. We'll put your business website and whatnot in the comments of this. So if you're on Oahu and you watch this and you're looking at buying property, even if it's your first one, as you learned from Keahi, it doesn't matter what you have, what you're making. There's a way to do it. There's a plan, and him and his team can get you that plan. So, I mean, he's done it for us, and we've had nothing but success because of him. So we appreciate you and your time. And
can I say something?
Yeah, of course.
No, I appreciate you guys. And it doesn't have to be real estate. They can just call me. If they say Nick Garofalo or Glenn, right, Adriatico, I'll help them. And we'll help them get whatever direction they need to go, right? I mean, if it just, we talked about it offline. Whatever we put out there comes back to us. And I want to help the people that help me, right?
Likewise.
And I appreciate it. And we were talking about Sean Ryan offline. I should have brought a Sig Sauer P365, but I didn't. I'm so sorry I didn't do that. Next time I'll do that. If you'll have me again, I'll bring something that we can give you. So
we like to give gifts to like some of the ones we've done in the Philippines, and it's usually like a single at 40 T-shirt or a jersey, but you're not single at 40.
Yeah, no.
Walking around the house in this jersey.
Single at 40, babe.
But yeah, thank you, Keahi.
Right,
always a pleasure, man.
Absolutely,
Thank you so
man.
much.
Thank you.